But I mean, abortion has always existed in the history of man. I mean, it's never been out of it. You've had hedge witches, so to say, giving it, and witch doctresses and shamans, and it's been integral into religion and social politics for years throughout our history. The only difference is now that we're beginning to understand the science behind it. We become more, I suppose, more focused on the minutiae of it rather than the emotional aspect of it. Like, what stage is the fetus at this? What stage is it a week after? What stage is the week after that? Rather than while that has its importance, it's also important to realise in the larger scale how it affects everyone around it as well.
I think that's the thing that is often missing in Irish debates, where there has been a focus on the rights of the fetus and the diminution of the rights of the woman. And that's something that I think is coming back into focus. Although I think there are certainly groups which fail to see the importance of women's rights in this issue. But maybe it's the next slide, or maybe the slide after. Yes, no, that's the one. We actually saw this recently, and it was cause for belief that at least some people in the government recognise that we need to move forward in this issue. Claire Daly had introduced a bill last year to allow for abortion in cases where a woman's life is in danger. She reintroduced it in December after Savita's death. And in his speech during the debate on her bill, although the government rejected her bill, Alan Shattle, the Minister for Justice, recognised that we need to do something about the abortion issue. But among the things that he recognised was that the constitutional amendment qualifies the constitutional rights of women in a way that men will never have their rights to life and health qualified. And he actually put that into words when he said there is no impediment to men seeking and obtaining any required medical intervention to protect not only their lives but also their health and quality of life.
The answer, Michael, is that if men were to carry babies, we'd not be discussing this now.
That's true.
There's also the thing that if somebody was going to kill a man and he killed the person who was going to kill him in self-defense,
yes.
what's the difference with a fetus going to kill
Exactly.
him?
Yeah. That argument is made in protection of women's rights. And in fact, if someone were going to seriously injure you and in responding to that, you killed the person, you would be able to argue self-defense as well. With this particular complex issue. And the law, yeah.
It's the land here.
Yes.
It wasn't the church law as well. There was a separation. You know, your rights as a human being, regardless of your sex, should come first.
Yes.
And you should be allowed to say what happens to your body.
Yes.
You know, and nowadays with the early detection of pregnancies, it's a lot easier to deal with. It's not, even 20 years ago it was different, the way they could detect pregnancy. I mean, you can go to any chemist now and detect pregnancy.
That's right.
Within days.
That's right.
You could never do that before. So the big issue they're talking about with the long, drawn out, oh yes, it's 24 weeks, but most of the abortions, I'm sure you'll agree, are carried out
within the first 4 weeks to 8 weeks.
So you see, the people that are making the case against are actually talking from the bottom most of the time anyway, but it's grossly exaggerated to suit your idea of a fetus.
Yes, yes. I agree with what you're saying. I think we've seen enormous step forwards in what's available scientifically to terminate a pregnancy, and I think we have delayed making certain steps in relation to women's equality issues and our expectations of what women's lives will involve. I think we're quite behind in those issues in this country. When the ABC cases came to the European Court of Human Rights, the courts acknowledged that in most European countries those women could simply have chosen to have abortions. The countries in which they could not would be Ireland, Malta, the Vatican City, and Poland, in which abortion is legal in certain circumstances, but in which it is difficult to access. So we actually, in relation to how we think about women, we are many steps behind our European partners and the way in which we think of women's rights to make private decisions about fertility, about family issues. We are quite far behind developments in philosophy and thinking in other states which are our partner states. I don't think we'd be as behind if we didn't have Britain as our safety valve to which we send women, because this issue would have built up into something that had to be...
They're enabling.
I think they...
I think they cut the thing and said, no, you sort it out yourself. Do you think the government...
I would hate that to happen for the sake of women. I'd hate that to happen for the sake of
would the
women.
women here put up with it? I mean, your generation surely isn't getting up on your back legs and saying, my body, my right.
Yes. I think
I
that
mean,
would
my generation
Yes.
did in the UK, and that's
Yes.
what turned the tide. It was people like myself in nursing or anywhere else where you knew all the rules, you knew what was going on, you could see the harm it was doing, overcrowded, poor, really poor people who were suffering the most. And they just got out there and they lobbied and they did it. And maybe that's what needs to happen here.
I think it's also like, we were talking before about how I think one of the systemic problems here as well is that it is precisely the women who come from families who tend to be in positions of power that have the money to travel. So that also, it's exactly like the safety valve is all the more powerful then, because their daughters go. And if that
Yes.
stopped,
I think that's a very good point, that those who have money can travel and those who don't have money can't travel.
It's amazing the amount of people who go there with a grandma or an
Yes,
auntie, because she's been over there and she's had it done. And
that's right.
it's appalling that it's happening. Generations down the line, and I'm appalled
Yes.
from my age group,
Yes.
thinking that this is backward, it's retarded. It's backward and
Yes.
retarded,
No, I
and it's
agree.
appalling. And maybe that's the cause you should be fighting. Maybe should be to go around with a couple of frying pans and smack some of these men around the head. And, look about.
Yes.
It seems to be the people who are legislating and making all these.
It's an
They haven't got ovaries, no rights.
Well, it's true. Most of the people who make the decisions on this politically are men, and most of them,
She sent alarm.
most of them have limited knowledge, shall we say, of pregnancy or the issues that may arise during pregnancy.
But most women here have limited knowledge.
That's right.
They're not given the education that you've got in school elsewhere in
Yes.
Europe. You don't get that.
Yes, that's correct.
I mean, my 12-year-old in France would tell me everything. Stuff I didn't even know.
Yes,
From the education she had in a Catholic school
yes,
in France.
yes,
Because this Catholic school was just an umbrella.
yes.
They weren't allowed to teach religion, and neither was the religion allowed to interfere with her education.
Yes.
So she was given everything.
Mhm.
She'd come home with a sack full of goodies, which I hadn't seen half of them. And she's like, oh, I can use these when I'm 15. Quick.
I actually went to a CBS school and graduated in 2005. So I was working out there when I was in transition area, which would be about 2003. We were shown an anti-abortion video called The Silent Scream,
All right.
where there was a, I don't know what you call it, where you could see the inside or whatever. I can't think of the exact name. The instrument.
Prenatal thing, screening.
It's a scan.
Yeah.
The
Sonogram, yeah.
sonogram. And it shows the instrument being put in, and then it showed, it kind of freeze framed in the fetus had its mouth open and look at this, the silent scream, and it was complete propaganda. I was completely scared. It was like traumatized.
I think the thing is, we shouldn't underestimate how major an issue abortion is for a woman either. It involves having to make a decision in good conscience based on weighing up a whole range of issues. And having access to the information on all of those issues, I think, is a problem. I think when we talk about choice, it is about the fact that one sometimes has to make those choices. They have to be informed choices. And choice involves making a decision not to terminate as well as a decision to terminate. And I think that often is forgotten. And I think people often make decisions without having adequate information, and that is one of the major problems of criminalising abortion in this country. People find themselves having to make a decision and to dash to England as soon as they can get the money together. I attended a conference at which an English counsellor was speaking, and she was saying that in her experience perhaps 15% of women she counsels decide that they will postpone the decision or they'll not go ahead with the abortion. She found that Irish women do not have the possibility of deciding to postpone because it has cost them money to get themselves there. They have the fares back and forth. They've maybe arranged to have their children minded, pretending that they've gone to London for a shopping expedition. All of these factors actually force people to make less informed decisions than they might make if there was an attitude that did not stigmatise women who were choosing abortion. And I think we've just had apologies to the Magdalene women for the stigmatisation of those women, and we'll look forward to the day when we apologise to the women who've been forced to travel for a whole range of reasons for the fact that they've been criminalised and stigmatised in this society. I don't know if you want to continue through this or if you'd rather just raise questions of your own, but we can flick on to the next one if you'd like to. And if you do want to say anything at any stage, don't feel at all inhibited about doing it. That's just about how the National Women's Council would view gender equality, and I think we can flick on by that one. Just talking about the law and abortion, one of the reasons why abortion is criminalised in this country is a piece of legislation that dates from 1861, and under it, a person performing an unlawful abortion and a woman having the unlawful abortion faces life imprisonment. And this is one of the things that's regarded as having had a chilling effect on doctors. With no certainty of whether the abortion they are performing is legal or illegal, they don't know whether they face up to life imprisonment. And you will have heard doctors perhaps at the Oireachtas hearings after Christmas saying we need legal clarity on this. We need to know that we don't face imprisonment for intervening where we judge that it is correct.
I mean, that's disgraceful that they're left in such uncertainty. I mean, you know, no matter what they do, they can be ruined and it can ruin a woman's life on the basis of their own fear. That's been perpetuated by an outside source.
Yes. Would you like to turn to the next one? Because I'll kind of flick through them quite quickly in order just to get to the end for your sakes. I've already mentioned that the amendment to the Constitution that was introduced in 1983 had this effect of weighing up a woman's rights against a fetus's rights. And it was, as you heard in the film, intended to ban abortion completely. And there were arguments made at the time that one effect will be that doctors will no longer be able to perform treatments that had previously been performed, and that does seem to have been one effect of the amendment. But in 2000, when there was a previous hearing of all of these issues, it was established that some doctors did terminate. We've never had figures until this year. Ireland does not collect figures on terminations of pregnancies, but at the hearings in the Oireachtas, obstetricians from a couple of the Dublin hospitals stated that they perform terminations where they judge it necessary. It's been estimated that there are perhaps 30 in Ireland every year across the 17 or so maternity hospitals. We know what the ex-case judgment was from the film. It was the finding that there was really substantial risk for the life of the woman, then abortion is permissible. And if we go on to the next one. This is just reinforcing what we said about there being a legal vacuum for 21 years. It was established that where a woman's life is endangered, she had a constitutional right to her life being protected. And in 2010, the judgment in the ABC cases found that Ireland has to do something to clarify what a woman's constitutional right is. We already have this right. There's no law laying out what it means. And they also said that where a woman qualifies, she must have accessible access to the treatment that she requires. So what it suggested was that we have to take action, and what is being considered, I gather, is legislation and regulations to deal with this issue of women's rights.